Hello and welcome to this Falcon BMS video. In this video I'm going to look at Ccip, Ccrp and DTOS, and I'm going to look at the features which they have in common, and this will go a long way in explaining how the fire control computer works. And if you understand this, you'll understand a lot about the flexibility of all these systems and how you can almost transition from one to the other during the heat of battle. The first thing we're going to do, as always, is tidy up our displays. Just change the color so it's a little bit more visible for us. Okay, we're heading in towards the range here, and while we're doing that, I'm going to make our fence checks by switching to air to ground mode. Now, I've done this in the previous video. So I'm changing our arming delays to 2. Going to change our ripple rate to singles. And our release angle, going to change it to 30. Now notice that we've got BD33s on board, and they're very useful in demonstrations like this because they are training weapons and they give a nice plume of smoke off, enabling us to determine the accuracy of our bombs. So I'm not going to use the range in this circumstance. I'm going to take a building in the small town somewhere to the north of the range, and this will give a clearer picture as to how our bombs are working, and the target is visible from a good standoff range. It's not very realistic because most of the targets that you will be attacking won't be that visible at distance, but it will serve for us to show how each of the different modes of attack work. So that's the town just below us there, and I'm going to mark one of the buildings on it. We just go into mark point mode, and remember that makes the HUD a sense of interest, and we can slew the cursor around. And there's 2 modes for the cursor. There's the slewing mode and then there's the ground stabilized mode. So as soon as we get reasonably close, I'm going to ground stabilize it with TMS up once. And I'm going to wait until we get a bit closer, and I'm going to fine tune the position of our marker, and then I'm going to set it. And the reason for this is so that we don't have the inaccuracy associated with the parallax. I've got to move that again, so let's just go back down once more. Ground stabilized, a little bit of queuing, and then finally a TMS up. And now we're going to make that as our steer point by clicking the M select button. So that's all good, and we're final check on our master arm switch, and we should be good to release weapons. Going to go back into our air to ground mode, and we can see we can get a range to target there. We can see it on the right hand side of the HUD, 2.6 miles, and that's our slant range. We can also see this marker here, which gives you an indication of when we can release the weapon. Once the cursor here is within that weapon range, we have the option to release, although we really don't control the release of the weapon. We only hold the pickle down, and the fire control computer determines when the release occurs. And this will become obvious as we go through the different modes on the video. So it is important to note that even in Ccip mode, when we've got the nose of the jet facing right down, and we've got the pipper on our target, and we've got a release mode, and we've pressed the pickle, even though the bomb appears to release straight away, it's actually being consented by the fire control computer. Unlike the bombs in old World War II aircraft, where the pilot actually physically engaged a handle or a latch to release the bombs. So we're now 10 miles out, maybe a little bit further than I wanted to go, but let's turn back in and let's do a Ccrp release on the target. You can see that we have a cue, a line coming from the gun cross at the top, which is telling us where our target is pointing. So if we follow that line along, we'll come to it. Now we see the classic or the typical symbology for Ccrp, and we can see that by way of the what we describe as the bomb fall line, which is a line going horizontally through the hood. We can also see the pip or the cue here, the distance cue here. It's rounded to the nearest mile and it's falling down. And when that hits the top of that range cue there, we're going to get a different symbology on the hood. And I describe that as the pre-release symbology. We get what's called a pre-release cue. Now as we get closer, we're going to see what's called the release cue, which is this line here falling towards the flight path marker. And once it hits that, you'll see it at the same point there, we get this pre-release cue. And now we get the what I describe as the release cue, which is it looks the same, but you can see it's falling down nice and slowly. When this hits the flight path marker is when the bomb will release once we have the pickle button pressed. I'm going to press the pickle button now. Forget about everything else except the bomb fall line and the flight path marker. They must be coincidental. So you've got to fly the bomb. Now, I released that time, but I think my flight path marker was slightly to the left. So we're going to move away and let's do a BDA assessment on how close we landed our bomb on the target. And we can see, yeah, it was pretty close. So I'm going to go through that again a little more slowly this time. I'm going to look at the symbology. I'll pause the sim. The most important thing that you do once you've hit the release point, once we fall through the pre-release point, is to make sure that the flight path marker here lies exactly along the bomb fall line. Now weather effects and various things are going to maybe make that difficult to control, but it's the most important thing that when we get the release cue on the flight path marker, the bomb fall line must be exactly straight through the center of that. So essentially what we've got to do is fly the flight path marker through the center of the bomb line at all times before releasing. And this applies to this symbology, which we can see in both Ccip, IP, and DTOS. So we're now 9 miles out. Let's turn back around again. So we're pulling the target cursor into the screen. So you can see it's a little bit confusing because we have the tadpole present. Now the tadpole really is, we've got to forget about it. And what we've got to do is we've got to concentrate on the little tail on the top of that flight marker not being visible behind the bomb fall line. Then we're bang on. And the only thing that the pre-release does is it gives us a warning as to when we're going to go in range. We don't really have any control over when that happens because the flight computer calculates it. So at this point it's a pre-release cue. We get the release cue, or the pre-release cue there, and now we have the release cue falling down. So we can maneuver the jet quite comfortably at this stage until the release cue hits the flight path marker. So now is the time we need to be doing the accurate flying. And I'm a little bit nose down, which is not a really big problem because the FCC will compensate. So I'm holding the pickle button in now, and now we have a release. And you saw on the release there the flight path marker will flash for a couple of seconds, and you'll also get an audible cue that the bomb is released. So now once again, let's come off the target. And let's have a look back around as to how we did. And we can see we got a hit. I don't know how close it is. Let's just come around a little bit more before the smoke dissipates. Yeah, that was right on target. We won't really get much closer than that. Also note that with Ccip mode and the delayed release modes, well, with any mode actually, Ccip, Ccrp and DTOS, the longer the bomb is in the air, the more inaccurate it's going to be. So the best you can do is make sure that when your release point occurs, you're right on the bomb. Your flight path marker is right centered on the bomb fall line. So we're going to move away again now, and we're going to look at Ccip mode. I'm going to talk a little bit about Ccip mode first. We did speak about it before, but we were in direct mode, so that when our angle of dive was good enough, the pipper actually points to a place on the ground that when we press the pickle button, the bomb will release automatically. And this is always going to be below the flight path marker, because as you can imagine, the bomb ballistically falls away from the direction of the aircraft. It will always fall under it. So the pipper compensates for that and points to where the bomb is going to fall. Now it creates some problems if, for instance, the aspect of our jet and the speed puts the pipper way out in front of us, because there's no way that, given the gravity effects on the bomb, that bomb is going to reach at that point. And we know that that's the case when we look at the line from the flight path marker to the pipper. It's broken by a small cue there, and it's the same kind of cue that you've seen in Ccrp for the pre-release cue and the release cue. It's just the same symbology, but we know we're in Ccip mode because we can see the pipper at the bottom of the line. Basically, this says that while we're in this mode, we're never going to release the bomb at this stage. So the fire computer kind of talks back to us and says, okay, you might want to release now, but we're going to have to delay it. Now it does provide us with a mechanism for releasing it at that point. So if we want to hit some point out in the distance on the ground there, we can do that. And when we know, there's two ways we know this is not going to happen, we're not going to release immediately, is one of them is you can see our little our cue on there, which is basically our consent cue, preventing us from, it's called a delay cue. It's saying that our bomb release will be delayed and we can't release it now. And secondly, if we pickle at that point, the symbology changes to being the way it was for Ccrp. So essentially we're transitioning into Ccrp mode. And this is very useful to know, because in some situations you may wish to release the target. You may have come in at too slight an angle and not get an immediate release, but still have a good chance of releasing on the target, and this enables you to do that. So we're going to move back around and we're going to look at that in practice. Altitude. And I need to go back into my Ccip mode to just get a bead on where our target area is. We're gone a little bit far away, so I'm going to cheat just a little bit by speeding up and getting us up to the target area. You can see a bit of weather turbulence here, which it's probably realistic, so it'll give us an idea of how weather affects us. Okay, so I think I might have gone a little bit too far. Let's go back into Ccip mode. So now we're at a good loft angle here, and we've seen in the Ccip mode we take a very high angle and offset, and then we invert, pull up in the nose to put it on the target, and generally we have a release cue. In this case we don't have a release, but we can still release the weapon. And you can see I'm now putting the weapon on the cue, and you can see it released almost immediately. So very soon after I had pickled on the target, the weapon released, but there was a delay. Now I wasn't concentrated enough on, actually it was going a little bit too fast, so it was slowing down the jet, so I wasn't concentrating enough at that stage on centering the bomb fall line with the flight path marker, which is what you've got to do each time. So let's see how we did. Okay, we were a little bit off the mark, as you can see there, but not much, which still gives you the idea. We're also suffering from the parallax problem because we were going in at not too high an altitude, and we were a good bit out when we designated the target. And this is what you'll find when you're doing Ccip or Ccrp, sorry, Ccip or dive toss. The biggest inaccuracy is going to come from your inability to put the cursor accurately on the target at the precise ground point. So we're going to now do and we'll do another one, just another example of that, because that all happened very quickly last time. I'm going to do a high level attack, and this is just give an indication of, even though you may have done a decent attack, you may find that you're a little bit too early on target and concerned about losing the attack. You can still attack by holding the pickle button down. So we're going to roll in, put the target on the nose, and we can see we still have the release cue is blocked, so holding it just for 1 second there, and now we've got the release. Only when we were at the right point, the fire control computer calculated that we could hit the bomb, we could hit the target at that stage. So don't be concerned if you don't get an immediate release. Once you keep the target focused, once you keep your focus on the target and you fly the bomb fall line, you still be able to get a release. So let's move away now and let's have a look at dive toss. So the first thing, actually, I'm going to just come back around, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to designate the target with dive toss, because it can be done at any stage in the attack. This is unrealistic because we're going to make an accurate we're going to get an accurate fix on the target. In dive toss, you can see the HUD becomes the center of interest again, and we've got our little cursor that we can move around. So if we want to put it back in bore sight, in other words, we align it with the flight path marker, we simply press TMS down. So if I move it, I can put it back. So I'm going to just extend a little bit in order to be able to turn around and designate. And while we're doing this, I'm going to just put it somewhere on the ground, and we just press TMS up once, and we can see it ground stabilizes the cursor. So we can move it around a little bit and fix it perfectly. We don't have to do anything more at this stage, because as you can see, we've got the symbology for the Ccrp symbology. So we can follow that symbology when we come in to attack the target. So I'm going to put it back,
altitude,
TMS
altitude,
down, and now let's roll around. Try and roll around quick enough without breaking our jet. Okay, so we've got a visual cue on the target there, which helps us. The reason why I'm doing this this high level target designation is I want to show the difference between the accuracy when you've got a high level accurate ground position. So I'm going to TMS up once, and I'm going to continue to keep it in the HUD so I can just adjust it. So that's pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at that, and now we're going to extend and come back around and do a loft attack. Actually, I'm going to head down south because there's a good straight line ingress into the target area from there. I do like these BD33s for this kind of work because you can drive the jet fairly fast and still not damage. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to reset the target designation at this stage. The fire control computer remembers where we designated accurately, so we can turn around and follow it in. You can see we're getting an indication of how far we are away from it. There's a little bit of bad weather here also, so you can see the jet's kind of wandering a little bit. Okay, 7 miles, so we're going to turn back around. And going across the queue, we're going to pull the target into the hood. Now we've got a reasonably straight approach here. So we're going to come down to low level. And remember, we've set our, if we look at our SMS page, we've set our release angle to 30 degrees. And it's that 30 degrees that determines, during dive toss, when this circular pre-release cue appears on the hood. And that's the point at which we're ready to pull the nose up. It's going to come up now. Okay, so we need to be climbing and keep the the flight path marker on the bomb fall line. And I'm going to hold the pickle in 25 degrees. Now, somewhere between 25 and 30, we got a release at about 480 knots. And a distance of probably close to 3 miles. So we could pull off target there if we wanted to and not overfly it. That's the reason why we normally do dive toss. Now let's have a look at the accuracy on this one. Okay, again, it was at the base of the, let's just turn around, it was at the base of the building, so I described that as being quite accurate. So we're going to go back off south again, and we're going to do dive toss once more, and this time we're going to do it by visually cueing on the target area at low level. And I really want to demonstrate the inaccuracy that's generated through dive tossing, and why low dispersion munitions are probably not going to be that effective using dive toss. So we'll extend out again, approximately the 7 mile position. Now note that we didn't have to be exactly at 30 degrees, and this can be confusing in some of the documentation when you're doing dive toss. You know, they say if you've set it up for 30 degrees, you have to be at 30 degrees for the bomb release. The 30 degrees doesn't release the bomb, it's the timing, where you are in space and the speed you're at and your altitude that the flight control computer, or the FCC computer calculates. So when you're in the climb, once again, with all these bombing modes, you have to make sure that the bomb fall line is being covered by the flight path marker. Fly the flight path marker along the bomb fall line, so no matter when the weapon releases at least one dimension, the vertical position of the bomb will be correct. So they're coming back around now, and this all happens quite quickly if you remember. So this time I'm going to reset the cue, and we're going to try and put it on the bomb as accurately as we can. You can see the jet's bumping around the place, so it's quite difficult to do that. So I've got it there now, and now we've got the climb cue straight away. So I'm going to fly up, keeping an eye on the horizontal line. You see it now, it's at 5 degrees, still rising with me. I've gone off a little bit, need to come up, hold the pickle. Now I've overcooked it because I didn't pickle soon enough, and we lost the position. So if the bomb released after that, it would have overflown the target and we would have wasted munitions. So I'm going to have to do that once more. So that's a good example of what you shouldn't do. Once you pull into the climb, put your finger on the once you pull into the climb and you've got your flight path marker on the bomb fall line, put your finger on the pickle and hold it, so that when the time comes to release, even if you haven't got a huge climb and you've got too close to the target area, the bomb will come off.
Altitude.
Let's just speed this up a little bit. Okay, back around. And we're not going to designate again because we've got a good designation on it. Oops, good designation on it from the last time. Coming in from the east, not really where I wanted to come in from, but however, it still demonstrates what we're trying to do. So forget about this cursor here at this stage. These are the two pieces that you want to be watching, because the wind could be blowing you off. So now we see the release cue, the pre-release cue, and we know it's pre-release because this hasn't fallen into the cursor there. Now we're going to hold it, and now we're going to climb. And watch the small horizontal line as it meets the flight path marker. Up, 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 up. And now the release occurred. Now the release occurred at something like 20 degrees there, which is, it's fine once your standoff distance is good enough. And now let's have a look at where our bomb falls. Okay. You can see that's probably the worst so far. And the reason why is, remember, we were coming in from the south, so it's offset actually in the north-south direction, which actually is where the parallax is worst, because we designated when we were coming in from the south. So that really covers dive toss, Ccrp and Ccip, and how similar they are in terms of what they do, and some information on, well, some idea of the kind of accuracy that you get and inaccuracy you get with the different methods and the different approaches. And probably the 2 points to take home from this video are, the first one is that when you've got the bomb fall line in the hood and you want to release, you pickle and make sure the bomb fall line is covering, actually it's the opposite, make sure the flight path marker covers the bomb fall line, because you fly the flight path marker onto the bomb fall line. Make sure that those two exactly coincident when the release cue hits the flight path marker. That's the first thing. And the next thing is to not get too hung up about when the release is going to occur. You can slow it down and speed it up, and I'll show you that in a second as the last thing in this video. But the take home point is, watch the release cue. The release cue is determining where the release is going to occur. So you really have to let it happen and not try and force the jet into a position to let it happen. If you've inclined, if you've gone into an incline for your dive toss and you've done it too late or your speed is too slow, don't be too concerned, because you will get a release if you hold everything steady at that point in time. You obviously want to get an ideal release, and if you're following the weapons, a proper weapons planned system, you will fly all those parameters accurately. But it is important to know that the release is not determined by those angles, it's determined by the position in space, configuration of the aircraft relative to the target. Okay, to finish up, I'm going to show how the release cue can be advanced or retarded. And I'm going to do this in dive toss mode. And I'm just going to designate a target out there in front of us. And TMS up, designates the target, and now I'm going to watch the
Caution.
bomb fall line. So we can see the pre-release queue is coming down. And then followed by the release queue. And we're going to hold the pickle in now, and as we get close to the target, I'm going to nose it down and pull back on the throttle, and we're going to delay the release, delay. We can't offload, we must offload the jet, we can't be negative G when we're releasing, so pull up a little bit. We should get it now. So that's a release. So in the similarly, we're going to pull up this time, although it's pretty much like a dive toss as we've seen. On designate again, and flight path marker and the bomb fall line. Forget about the target designation on the ground. As we get close to it, we get the pre-release. I'm running out of fuel now, so we have to do this. It's do or die. So I'm going to hold the pickle down, pre-release queue, and then release queue, and I'm going to force this up by pulling up on the stick, and so we can speed up or slow down. So that's pretty much as I want to say about Ccip, Ccrp, and dive toss, and I hope you found this useful. Please feel free to comment, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks a lot.